Welcome back to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm Susie Selleck, and today we are in Ghent, Kentucky, and I'm here with Sandra Thomas. Sandra, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so we are right off of Main Cross right now, and there is a beautiful cemetery right behind us as well. Can you just elaborate on that to get us started?
Well, the first part of the cemetery, closest to Ghent, is the Scott Cemetery, and then the Masonics took it over, so the second part's the Masonics, and then the third part's the Oddfellows Cemetery. So there are actually three cemeteries there, and then at the end of it was the Black Oddfellows Cemetery. So there are actually four cemeteries.
So Sandra, I know that there's a lot of names that would go along with the origin of the town, but just kind of starting after a deed was purchased, if we maybe want to just kind of quickly roll through the origin of the town and its start.
Okay, the town was purchased by the Sanders brothers, excuse me. And there were two Samuels. One was an uncle and one was a nephew.
Two Sanders.
Two Sanders brothers.
Okay,
two
gotcha.
Sanders.
Okay.
And the problem was the nephew was a baby who inherited the area. And his father died, and he ended up growing up in Georgetown. So it was actually after Vivi was settled in about 1802, they were able to do something with the land that they owned. So the Sanders developed this into a town, and that it was platted in 1816.
Okay.
And John Scott platted it, and he was Gallatin County surveyor, because this was all in Gallatin County at that time.
Okay.
It didn't become Carroll County until 1838.
Gotcha.
When Jen ended up. But anyway, so Port William in Carrollton was also Gallatin County at that time.
Okay.
And so when they laid out Ghent, it was laid out to be a city. You will find the city streets and alleys are a lot wider than they are even in Carrollton, because it was planned to be a city. Of course, that didn't happen. But and then it was incorporated in 1838.
Okay.
On the legislative books.
All right. It had a couple buildings, right? A couple businesses, just enough to get it going.
It had a tavern.
Well, that counts. That counts. That'll get something started.
That tavern was down on, if you go down to the river. I said earlier the river was a lot lower than it is today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a whole area. There was a hotel down there, the Acre Hotel, the Abusier House. All of this went into the river in about 1899. There was a flood. Oh. So a lot of the lower Ghent just went out of existence. But Benjamin Craig had gone back to Virginia and purchased this land from Anne McCool.
Okay.
And women couldn't own property.
Right.
So the husbands owned it.
The husband. Mm-hmm.
So that's how it became McCool's Creek.
Gotcha.
From being a McDonald's survey, military survey. And the king had awarded that for McDonald's, her brother's services in the French and Indian War.
Oh, yeah. When you and I were talking earlier, you kind of had this great timeline of the history of Ghent. So maybe that's probably, as opposed to going into the heyday, do you want to start with that history of Ghent?
You want it there? Well, earlier it was a commercial town.
Okay.
Based on the river. And then after the war in 1865, at the end of the war in 1865, the education started in Ghent. There's a small school still standing in Ghent. This little brick house on Union Street that was a 3-month school. And after the war, they started having a full-time school, and people moved into Ghent. Then people came. They wanted to build a college. I think one of the things that was instrumental, the community was settled initially by people from Virginia. And then the Stussies had a large tobacco warehouse. And that was when, back in the days, when they prized tobacco and put it in hogsheads, rolled it to the wharf, and shipped it down the river.
I didn't know that.
And
Not
the
about
Solomon
the hogshead.
Wright's warehouse is still in existence as you go down to the end of Main Cross here. It goes all the way and dead ends at the river. And that's where the Vivi Ghent ferry was.
Okay.
Now, there was an early ferry that was parallel to the street. A block over is a street called Ferry Street. And if you go all the way to the river there, one of the earliest settlers built a house down there, which is still standing, is Jeremiah Craig's.
Okay.
And that was transferred to his son in 1805.
Okay.
And he ran a ferry boat. It was Jerry's Ferry.
Do you guys have a grapevine in this town that is
Probably is older
than the Civil War?
It's right down the street here
We have
on
to
the
check
right.
that out. Okay.
Yes.
Is it it's big? Is it huge?
It's huge.
Oh, I can't
it's
wait to
in
see
a
it.
sycamore tree.
It's in a sycamore tree.
Yes.
Okay. I thought that was a special
Two
thing
great
that we
ones.
saw. And now there's a couple homes that you and I were talking about earlier as well. Do you want to touch on those just a
Okay,
little bit?
one's right down here, the James Tandy Bledsoe home.
Okay. Yep.
And the James Tandy Bledsoe home was early, and that's the one that's got the grapevine.
Okay. Yeah.
And then 42, you've got Theodoric Fisher's house, and it's called the Ghent House.
Okay. The Ghent house.
And he was the first trustee, one of the first trustees of Ghent, and that's 1835.
Okay.
And then next door to his is the renowned James Tandy Ellis home,
Yes. Yeah. Can you talk about that?
because James Tandy Ellis did the circuit with the Chautauqua. He was a humorist. He was a prolific writer. He wrote books like Tang of the South. He also did blackface. He was a very large man, and and the whole house is a bed and breakfast now.
Oh. Yeah.
So in the house, you can actually see pictures of him and all the things about James Tandy Ellis.
Very cool.
And yes, and then he was Adjutant General of Kentucky.
What is Ghent today, and what do you foresee it evolving into?
Well, let's just start right here.
Yeah.
This is Lee Hanlon's home. If you look at the yard and the trees and everything and the flowers and the way he's got this house, his home looking.
Yeah.
This is what Ghent used to look like, say, in the 50s.
This was a blanket example of Ghent.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And town after town, house after house. Well, Ghent had a lot of people who had no children, or it was kind of like a retirement community. And when those people passed away, a lot of you'll drive through Ghent today and you'll see just yard, an empty vacant lot. Well, the old hotel's been torn down. A lot of the houses are torn down. And so you've got the choice of fixing up something or tearing it down.
Right.
So a lot of things are getting torn down. The other thing is we have a literary society that's still in existence. We are the oldest literary society federated in the state of Kentucky.
Is that thanks to Ghent College when it came through, or
That
is
was
that
after
just...
Ghent College.
Okay, after. But did that have anything to do with...
It brought a lot of cultured people here.
Okay.
It brought a lot of education into town.
Gotcha.
And so people had an appreciation for education.
Yeah.
So this club started as a debate club, H&P Literary Club. We still meet once a month. And so it's still organized. And it's known as the KBM Froman Club because she was a great educator here. And so that was the beginning of really building up in the town of Ghent.
Gotcha.
And people moving into Ghent. And they came here for an education.
Right.
So this is something, and then the Ghent School, I think the last time it was 1971, was the consolidation of schools. So now you've got no school. Out of 3 churches, it was a Southern Protestant community.
Right.
Out of 3 churches, you've got 2 still operating. And so they were closing their doors. You had a front porch community for a number of years because the railroad, the automobile switched to the US 42 in the 30s.
Right.
Newtown below Ghent was built in the 30s. Today, with the Kentucky Utilities, with NAS, and all these factories, the community again is changing. You know, people have to make a living.
Yeah.
And that's what the community reflects.
Now, something like the bed and breakfast, then, like where the businesses that are here, they're doing well, self-sustaining, if you will. You know, are you able to touch on some of those as far as like where we are in the present?
Well, some of that I think has to do with the new raceway, Sparta.
Okay, yeah.
Of course, you've got Belterra that's come in.
Yep.
Across the river. Markland Bridge, when Markland Bridge went in the 70s, that ended the ferry boat days.
Right, yeah.
So it's really been from 69 to the present that you've had so many things that were always here that are gone.
Right.
Being replaced by whatever the new vision is going to be. Is this going to be a bedroom community? Is it going to be a place where you can find a nice house to live? The apartments are an example of maybe a new Ghent. But I think people are going to have a new vision and look at what they want their community to represent.
Sandra, thank you for being able to sit down with us for a while, for being able to share, you know, some of the things that you've been through, the things that you know, just being able to hang with us for a while and share your town.
Thank you all.
Yeah. All right.
This is good.
Sandra. Thank you for watching another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm Susie, and today we were in Ghent, Kentucky. Sandra, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was great. And remember, travel slowly and stop often. Bye for now.